Makini Smith. In 2009, while going through a divorce, I decided to jump straight into entrepreneurship. In 2012, I lost my sister and asked myself, what legacy do I want to leave behind? Since then, I've become a serial entrepreneur, helping other women publish their books, produce their podcasts, and reach their big goals to walk in their greatness. I realized the importance of sharing our stories of resilience and how it can be another's guide to walk in a manner worthy of their calling. We are blessed to be a blessing, so get ready to be blessed with an inspiring testimony. Hey, Faith Walkers. Thank you for joining us on the A Walk in My Stilettos podcast, where we have conversations with amazing women that are letting us step into their shoes. I help women to strengthen their resilience muscle, own their stories, and conquer their fears so they can reach their goals. I get inspired when I see another woman succeeding, but what interests me more is her backstory and her mindset on how she got there. So today's guest is about to bless us with her testimony, and since you're already here, you may as well subscribe. Today we have Rachel L. Proctor. She's an entrepreneur and author who helps people turn ideas into successful online businesses. A self-proclaimed market research junkie, Rachel has hit 7-figure sales marks as she's built a versatile and trusted learning resource hub for aspiring and successful business owners alike. Dedicated to equipping entrepreneurs with the skills needed for success, Rachel provides free business training on concepts including branding, budgeting, profitability, productivity, and more, with an emphasis on real-world skills, accessible technology, and holistic learning. Rachel helps students pinpoint their unique ideas and turn them into profitable, life-changing business ventures. Please welcome to the show, Rachel Proctor.
Yes. How are you? How's it going?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here.
And I am excited to have you here. I've been following you for quite a while on social media, and I love everything that you're doing and how you serve, and it's just an honor to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you today.
So I love to start the show with an icebreaker question because I believe that as women, we have all of these different titles that we go by, but a title that's not given enough significance is our name because our names have meaning. And every time someone says your name, they're declaring that meaning to you. So I would love to know, Rachel, do you know what your name means?
You know what? Yes, actually, my name is a Hebrew name and it means innocent lamb. So I've always thought that was interesting. But yeah, my name is actually has a Hebrew origin.
I love it. So before we get to where you are presently, I love to start at the very beginning and ask, what did you want to be when you're a little girl? Because sometimes that gives us some insight into where you are presently. So, take us back to when Rachel was a little girl. What did you want to be?
So when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be an architect. I was actually, when I think back on like growing up and like things that I did as a child, I was kind of, well, they probably were perceived as a little strange. So I always wanted to be an architect, and I would actually go into the grocery stores. And mind you, I was like 5 years old, 6 years old. And they would have like, when you would go into like grocery stores, they had these books. I don't think they so much have them now, but they were like these books where they would advertise homes for sale or, buildings that were going up, and they would have floor plans. And I would actually get these books every time I would go into the store. And like, literally I would go home and I would go through the books and I would look at the homes and like the elevations, and I would be drawing like floor plans as a 6 or 7 year old. And it was the weirdest, like, I'm thinking now, like, I'm like, wow, I was like 6 years old, 7 years old, like doing that. And although I am not, I'm not an architect now, I do kind of still look at the things that I do in terms of, even with my, I do real estate, I do investing, stuff like that. I still do look at a lot of what I do and the skill set that I was even building and just kind of tapping into at a young age. as architectural in terms of like design or strategy, or just looking at, how things are actually built,
Mm-hmm.
and how homes are built, but then looking at how that translates over into a lot of the other things that I do in terms of building a business, meaning starting with the foundation and then looking at all of the other things that go into making something solid, and beautiful at the same time. So I still look at a lot of what I do as architectural, if that makes sense.
I love it. And see, that's part of why I asked that question because as kids, our imagination is so vivid. We dream about
Right,
all these things and we fantasize, but then as we get older, society and people tell us to be more realistic. They start to limit
right.
our belief in a thing. And it's like you took that same foundation of what you wanted to be and made that into, who you are today. So that's why I love to hear the backstories of, what you wanted to be when you're little and see how it correlates.
Yep, yep, yep. That's so interesting. I never even really put it together like that until you just asked me that question. And I was like, well, it really is kind of like a lot of the same things in terms of, like I said, even approach and mindset. It's all building something, right? Starting with the foundation and then, building up from there. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how did you get into coaching?
On accident. It's accidental. So, like, coaching is relatively a new thing. So, a little bit about my backstory. I actually come from an entrepreneurial family. So, my dad was a pastor and he was a businessman. And so, because of that, I literally have never worked in corporate America. I've either always worked in the ministry, or we've always worked in our family business, or I've always worked for myself in some capacity as an entrepreneur. And so, one of the things that started to happen, like maybe like around the 2009, 10, 11-ish type, when like blogging and all of that stuff started exploding, I started being very interested in like that dynamic and what was happening in that world. And so I started I said, well, I started following a couple of people in terms of people that were kind of really getting into that space and really making a name for themselves, like Michael Hyatt and Seth Godin and these individuals that were, really blogging a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and they were actually starting to make a living from it. And so, long story short, I knew that, I wanted to do that, but I didn't know how people were actually making money from it. And so, some kind of way, like, I started to try to take my knowledge that I'd had growing up, like I said, growing up in an entrepreneurial family, like I can literally remember being like 13, learning how to make payroll, like that's
Mm-hmm.
how long our family just emphasized that lifestyle. But I was trying to take the things that I'd learned building a brick and mortar business with my family and translate that into the online space. And it doesn't work like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started like looking at the blogging, but trying to figure out, okay, how are people actually making money? And so from that, I started really kind of going down a rabbit hole and finding these people that were being what was called coaches. And, at that time, coaching is relatively new in the grand scheme of things, right? And so that's how I kind of stumbled upon like these different business models of like becoming a person that is simply selling your wisdom, selling your
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, right? And showing
Mm-hmm.
other people how to do what you do. And so it was kind of like I said, through a lot of trial and error, through a lot of, going around in circles, I really found, like I said, my footing in coaching when I actually kind of found the right mentor and coach to, if that makes sense, like to help me
Mm-hmm.
make it all make sense. So it's like, okay, how does blogging and all these things, which blogging eventually turned into what we know more so now is like content marketing, right? And how
Mm-hmm.
all of these pieces kind of, so I kind of feel like I grew up, with the development of this whole world that we know now when we think of online coaching and digital marketing and content marketing and all of these things. So I feel like I kind of just like found my way, like I said, through a lot of trial and error to wind up being a coach and somebody who is able to show other people who want to do the same thing, especially how not to do it, but more so
Mm-hmm.
how to do it, because I can write a book on how not to do it. Like I said, there's a lot of mistakes, a lot of just throwing spaghetti at the wall, but that is kind of how I got here, and I absolutely love being able to just kind of serve as a guide for others that want to do the same thing.
Wow. You had so many points within there that I would love to unpack. Like
Sure.
a lot of people, a lot of people assume that on their journey, they need to know how they're going to get there or how they're going to do a thing. And you even started by saying you started by accident, which, I believe nothing happens by chance. Everything happens for a reason. God has his plan. We just don't always know in advance what the plan is. But you had to go through this trial and error to find your way. But the beauty is in the journey, in what you learn along the way. And then you got a coach. So you got some guidance. You got someone, to help you figure it out. And now you're helping others with that knowledge to figure it out. I love it.
Yep. It absolutely is a journey. And I think if I could go back and do it all over again, I would absolutely do it the same way, because there were so many pieces that I picked up in terms of just resiliency and I guess skill sets that I picked up, right? That I now have a better appreciation for as I grow in business and as I move into other areas of life, that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to develop if I hadn't went that route. So
Right.
I absolutely love the fact of, hindsight is of course 2020, and looking back on it, it absolutely served as like a training ground for me to build up a lot of aspects that I now realize how much I need. That I think if I would have tried to fast track my way there and go another route, I wouldn't have been able to develop it and develop the appreciation for it.
Right. I love it. So what inspired you to write the book, My Best Year Ever?
Wow. That is like kind of like my baby, right? I've always wanted to write a book. I've always loved writing. And it was always something I knew I wanted to do. However, my approach for writing a book, I never felt like, I guess I could never really get the book out, because I never felt like I had a story or had anything that anybody would want to read. Like, I didn't feel like I had a lot of the things that I felt like were interesting enough or substantial enough to actually write a book. And so I realized, though, that through that process, again, everything's a process, but through that process, I realized the reason that I couldn't write the book when I wanted to write the book was because I had not become the person that I needed to be in order to write the story that was actually going to make an impact. And so through those years of saying, okay, I have this goal to write this book, right? It's on my vision board, all these things that we do. And I still could never get it out. But a lot of it, I think it was a twofold thing. It was like, I didn't feel like I had enough. And that's one thing I think I want to kind of really hit home with this, that I learned through that process too. And this may be helpful for some people out there that want to write stories. Like, sometimes we just don't feel like our stories are enough, when that's absolutely not true.
Right.
We feel like we have to have these, I don't know, Guinness Book of World Record breaking, like, things that happen in our life to make for an interesting story. And I've learned that, again, just by telling your story, sharing the lessons that you've learned, no matter how simple they may seem to you, I've learned that what seems like very simple and natural to us is rocket science for somebody else, or like just the thing that somebody else needs to let them know that they're not alone in that. Like, they're not the only person that has struggled in these areas. And so there was a lot of things that came out in terms of really birthing that book out. But one of the things, like I said, is I had to get over the fear that my story wasn't enough. But also I had to realize that through going through what I went through, that it was enough. And it was the thing that I needed to go through to become the person that was going to write the book.
When you speak to becoming the person, and I think for many of us, we may have people that we look up to or that we admire. And if we are going to change our self-image and our identity of who we are, we need to become, who we desire to be. And feeling like your story isn't enough, you pointed out, like, you absolutely are enough. And I can't even stress that enough. Sometimes people will be in my DMs and talk about, well, they don't think they have a story, or they don't think whatever. Like, your story may be about you, but it isn't only for you. Your story could be someone else's blueprint. There is someone out there willing to pay for what you know right now. There is someone out there right now that could use your story to get up out of bed. There is someone
Mm-hmm.
that could benefit from hearing your story to move forward in life. Like, we don't realize how important our stories are.
Right. Right. And I think through going through the things that we go through, right, it writes the book for us. Like for
Right.
me, a lot of the things that when I realized it, when it was time for me to get the book out, it was very easy. Like I got the book out in less than 30 days because the book was really already written, right? It
Right.
was just recognizing the value in what I had to work with
Mm-hmm.
and the value of the lessons that I'd gone through over that period of time that God took me through, realizing the value of it. And the book really wrote itself. It wasn't a lot of just me having to conjure up these ideas, like they were there,
Right.
but it came with me changing my perception on what I went through and the value of what I went through to actually get the book out.
Right. And I think that it's so important that you even spoke to it. It took you 30 days to write the book, because there are people that have been trying to write a book for 10 years and can't get the book out. And then when I tell them that my first book, when I wrote the first draft, it took me 3 months. But then when I went to go revamp it and make it of more value, it only took me a month. And they're like, how? But if you look at your life right now, it is enough, first of all, and it's enough. The book will write itself. It is looking at and breaking it down into, how can that help someone else? What lessons did you
Yeah.
learn that you can break down to help someone else along their journey? You don't have to go out and learn new stuff. It's just, even when they're thinking about writing the book and breaking it into, individual chapters. Okay, so this part of your life, what did you learn in this part of your life? You can tell your story about that, but then you also tell the lessons that are learned, that is beneficial to somebody. It's your life. It shouldn't take you 10 years. You can write your book right now, and then if you need to, write a part two 5 years from now, because you've got 5 more years of experience to add on to that.
Absolutely. And I think you said something that was so key and that I struggled with. It was like, you don't actually, if you find yourself having to go out and actually learn something new with the intent to regurgitate that in the form of a book, then you are on the wrong track. Like,
Right.
you absolutely should not do that, because like I said, everything should be native to you and natural to you. And even in my coaching programs, one of the things that I teach is how to become a tour guide for the people that you are called to serve, whether that is through your business, whether that is through writing books or speaking or just whatever your thing is. There was two, as I began to like go through this online world and just even just the influencer model and all the things that we see out there online and in the social media space, I began to see like two different types of people or entrepreneurs, if you will. And there were these people that I saw that were kind of serving as like travel agents. And so one of the things that when I think of a travel agent, these are like the people that are sending people places that they themselves have often never been, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we see that because we see a lot of people that will learn something, but they don't necessarily have the skill set or the experience to really truly say they know how to do that or
Yeah.
duplicate that for somebody else. And you have these travel agents that are sending their clients to places that they themselves have never been. So when their clients get there, there's a chance that their clients will still get lost or may not know the way around because there's literally nobody there in that space and in that new place that they sent them to show them the way.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I try to coach my clients into helping them to become tour guides for people, meaning if you've ever been on like a trip and you've had an amazing tour guide, that tour guide is there with you on the journey, and they are
Right.
out front with you, showing you the shortcuts, telling you the history of the place that you're going through, telling you what to avoid, and helping you fast track your way through a place that you otherwise would not have known your way around had they not been there. And so I try to tell them, how can you become a tour guide for your community and for your audience and for your clients, the people that you're called to lead? What is the place that you have been to time and time again throughout your life that you could help somebody fast track their way through because you've learned the shortcuts, you've learned the places to avoid, you've learned the system, right, to get you through that particular place. And I think if we all can be reflective enough, there is something that we have in our life of value that we could actually serve as a tour guide for the people that we're called to serve in our lives. Like that place that you may even be ashamed of, right? It may have been a place of trauma, or like I said, just something that you've gone through, but now you have the actual system that you can actually walk others through that place to get a transformation. And so that they know that they are not alone, so that they know that there is hope, right? They know that there is a solution, and you are serving now as that face of hope, that they can actually have another way of living, thinking, and being.
I love how you've put that into the analogy of travel agent versus tour guide. And on top of everything that you've already explained about the two, I think it's very important, especially people who are looking for guidance or mentorship or coaching. Something that I always say is, if you're going to look for a mentor, look for someone who is doing what it is that you would like to do, and only take advice from people that you are willing to switch places with. So, for example,
Right.
I don't know, if I want marriage advice, I am going to speak to someone who is in a healthy, long-term committed marriage versus someone who is
Right.
single and constantly dating somebody new every week, right? They may
Right.
be able to give you their opinion, but in terms of wisdom on the actual experience and to guide you through things, you want people who have experienced it. And I'm just blown away by just the analogy in itself, because that just simplifies everything for me. I loved
Well,
it.
that's so true. I think one of the things too that I see a lot of, and this was a mistake that I made a lot. I was looking for mentors, but I was just looking for people that were successful, like no matter what they were successful in, right? Like I just wanted to see a successful person. But it's not even just the fact that they are successful, but like you said, finding people that are going on the journey that you want to go on, because there are nuances and just hidden booby traps, right? Like on every path. And you need a person that has been successful in that. Right? Like success is not just like, I was just trying to find success for success sake, right? But you need to find a person that is doing what you want to do, that can help accelerate your process through that area. When we talk about mentorship and coaching, like you want to find somebody that can help to accelerate you through that. And the only way that you can do that is to find somebody that is actually walking as your, the title of your podcast, that's walking in those shoes. Like they can help you to walk down that path as well.
Yeah, because oftentimes, for example, I work with celebrity ghostwriters and editors and other authors to help them publish their books behind the scenes. And I will do consultation calls with someone, and they'll say, well, what about this, that, and the third? And then I will let them know through my experience, not only because I've published 4 of my own books, but I have many people that have best-selling books out there that I've published on the back end. So I'm telling them what to do. And they're like, oh, well, people say that I should do this. Okay. Have any of those people ever published a book? Do not don't come to me with your travel agent advice when I am the tour guide.
Right.
Like,
that is so true. That is so true. Yeah. It's just, and it's so much advice out there, right? It's so overwhelming. So I think one of the things that you have to do is like really put your blinders on and keep your eyes on your own paper, right? And just try to block out a lot of the noise. And I know for me, I've had to totally get okay with sometimes just muting everything, even those people that serve as mentors and, tour guides for me, when I find myself doubting my own path. Like, it's kind of like you have to really stay focused on that, because sometimes we can feel like we're not doing enough or we're not doing it fast enough, because we're looking at other people's successes. And while that should serve as a place of inspiration, sometimes it gets us to where we get out of alignment with God and just our own journeys, because we're looking at where other people are. And so sometimes you have to like mute even the people that serve as inspiration and motivation to you when you start having those types of thoughts. And I don't even know how that applied to what we were just talking about, but I feel that for somebody.
No, it does. So completely.
I feel that for somebody. Like if you find yourself like getting distracted with all of this success that you see other people having, then, it sometimes that's exactly what I've had to do. It's like to just kind of mute that other stuff.
It totally relates to what we were talking about because I'm thinking of I've had some past mentors and coaches that have been tour guides for me along the way, but they can only lead me to a certain point. And there comes a
Mhm.
point where I have to tap into my intuition. I have to follow my discernment and go with what God is telling me to do. Sometimes they may be able to lead you up until a certain point, but it doesn't necessarily align with your core values when you get to a certain point, or it may not necessarily
Mhm.
align with the vision that God has for your life. So understanding when to, and even when you are being led by a coach or mentor, you should be tapping in, having that conversation with God, tapping into your intuition and looking within, because oftentimes we're so busy looking on the outside, looking at
Mhm.
what we see on the outside for direction when the direction should be coming from within. Outside can give you some guidance and help you, get over some of those potholes along the way and things like that. But you should be, tapping into that intuition. And then even when you're inspired by somebody, like the word inspired comes from being in spirit. So yes, you may connect with them, but then there is a certain point where that vision that you have was given to you and you only, and given to you for a reason. So even the person that you're inspired by, they may not even understand the level of the vision that's been given to you, or the
Exactly.
assignment that is on your life.
Right. And honestly, a good mentor and a good coach will help you find your uniqueness. Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
want to duplicate themselves and make you a
Right.
mini version of them. Like they want you to tap into that. Right. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the thing to keep in mind is as we're on this journey, whether that is you're going into entrepreneurship or you're running for office or just something that you're doing, maybe you don't even have a frame of reference for what you're trying to do. You have to remember that whatever you do, it is going to require you to be brave, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to require you to understand that sometimes there won't be a buddy system as you're going through this. Sometimes you won't get the applause or the affirmation on your idea. Everybody won't think it's brilliant, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you've got to know and just be brave to know that if God gave you that, then there's provision for it, right? If he gave you the vision, then pro means going before.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's exactly what provision is. It's attached to vision, not need, right?
Right.
So if when you have that vision, just knowing that if God gave you that, then he gave it to you for a reason, but it's going to require you to be brave because we won't always get, like you said, the external validation that we seek a lot of times to feel like we're on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just going to be an inner knowing, even if it seems like it's going the opposite. There has to be an inner knowing to know that, okay, just because this isn't working or this person didn't validate it, it does not mean that I'm not on the right path.
Right. And that's a huge point as well, because sometimes we are doing a thing, and because we are not getting the outside validation, we may have this inner thought or inner voice that tells us, I don't know. But if you look at, for example, okay, Noah's Ark, he built the ark, right? It's like people don't
Right.
necessarily believe in what you're doing until they see a thing. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you. It has more to do with their belief or their limitations. So you could say you want to do a thing and they may not even believe in the project or the thing that you're trying to do. But once you show them, you build the picture for them, you create the image for them, you show them what is possible, they may doubt it until they
Absolutely.
see that it's actually possible for that to happen.
You and that's so true. And one of the things that I've had to learn through my journey, like I said, I've served as an elected official before. I'm currently running for office. I mean, and in entrepreneurship. And one of the things that I've had to really get comfortable with is that sometimes, and this is especially true with family, right? Because we feel like when we have an idea and we want to do something, that family is supposed to be kind of like our built-in support system. And sometimes family are the last people to actually get on board
Right.
with what you're doing,
Right.
because a lot of times it isn't that they don't necessarily not support you. It's sometimes that they don't know how to support you because
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a frame of reference for where you're headed. And sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
don't even have their frame of reference, right? We're
Right.
going, day by day, step by step, and just trusting God that we're on the right path. And a lot of times doubt isn't necessarily because they doubt you. They just don't want you to fail or get hurt through the process
It
or
comes from a place
lose.
of love.
Because they do, yeah, it comes from a place of love, and they don't know how to support what you're doing. And sometimes we take it personal as though they don't love me or they don't support me, when in actuality, they just don't know how to support what you're doing because they don't have a frame of reference for it. God didn't give them the vision, and they just want the best for you in actuality. And sometimes that comes across as, oh, they don't love me or they don't support me, when that's really not the case when you get down to the brass tacks of it.
Yeah. And there are a lot of women that I've coached that come to me at first, starting with that. I want to do this and my family doesn't support me, my friends don't support me, or they don't understand, and they feel very alone. And I have to break it down to them and let them know it's not that they don't support you. For example, when I started out, I've been an entrepreneur for 11 years. And when I started out, doing real estate full time and it wasn't working out in the very beginning, and everyone was like, maybe you should get a job. You're now a single mom with 3 kids and you got a mortgage and a car payment. And I'm thinking, at the time I was thinking, oh, you guys don't support me, you don't believe in me. But no, out of love and out of a sense of security, their advice came from a place of concern. And it's not that they were thinking, oh, she can't do this, but oftentimes it's about the vision that they have, where they don't believe that it's possible for them to do it or for them to come out of that situation that way. So then their advice to you comes from that place. But oftentimes, because we are either, from a place of ego, we're in our feelings, and then we build anger and resentment because we're like, well, these people don't care about me. No, they do most times. It's not coming from a negative place, so it's all about perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so good. That is so key. And a lot of times they project their lack of confidence in their own ability to do it, and they project it on you. But again, it's because most of the time it does come from truly a place of concern and just, I want you to be successful. I want you to be stable. And a lot of times the traditional ways that we know how to do that is to just go get a job, right? Like, that's stable. You get predictable income. And, and I've been there, like you said, a lot of times it comes from ego, but sometimes it can also just come from, okay, I know that God told me to do this. And, it comes from sometimes it can come from a place of resolve within yourself, to say, okay, I'm going to stick with this, knowing that, at the risk of sounding like a cliche, if God told me to do this, then he's going to make a way for me to do this. And most of the time that is the case. Like, it comes through. And again, you have to go that way to build certain parts of your character and to be tested in certain areas so that God knows that he can trust you with more, right? Like, if we can't be committed in the lean seasons, how can God, and manage little, how can God trust us with much? And so there has to be sometimes a season like where we go through Joseph, where, like Joseph did, when God showed him all of these things, but everything that was happening for him in his life was the opposite of what God showed him. But it was just the fact that he needed to be tested to see if he could actually be trusted with the abundance and with the power and the influence that God gave him later. And so I think the same goes with a lot of us. It's like, we have to go through the testing period. And a lot of people don't want to go through that period because it doesn't feel good, right?
Right.
It doesn't feel good to have this vision that God gave you of all of this grandeur, but like everything that you're going through is the exact opposite of what God showed you. And again, it's just sometimes God has to test you for the big things by how you handle the little things.
Amen. Amen to that. That part about the testing period, because it doesn't feel good. Like, girl, I have taken all of my tests and made them my testimony. And all of you women have come on and shared, your test and turned it into a testimony. And I don't want to say people don't understand, but I find people who are not entrepreneurs, and I have nothing against anyone who, chooses a 9 to 5 or, chooses that stability of a job, but their level of faith, and I'm not questioning anyone's faith, but I'm saying when you're an entrepreneur, you are living by faith. You are living by faith every single day. There is no guarantee of a biweekly paycheck. There is no guarantee of a job tomorrow. There is no guarantee of income, right? You are literally letting go of control and living by faith. You are trusting in God. You are trusting in your abilities. You are trusting that things will work out. Like to me, I find entrepreneurship to be a different level of faith. And I find that it
Oh,
forces me to release the idea that I am in control. It forces me to
yeah,
release that idea or that comfortability or that it removes that thought process of saying, I have a paycheck coming in tomorrow. No, I have to every single day that I wake up, figure out how I'm going to serve in order to be rewarded financially with things. My days are not monotonous. I just find it forces me to lean on God a lot more than if I
yeah,
was in a 9 to 5.
yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, one of the things that I absolutely love about being an entrepreneur is that it gives you the ability to create. And our God was a creator, right? He was
Mhm.
an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. Like he took and created everything just by the words that he spoke. And we have that same ability to create. And I just love the opportunity that being an entrepreneur, it gives you to create something and make something your own and to use literally what God gave you in terms of just your ideas, right?
Mhm.
And putting those things into action and creating something that can serve other people because it's while business is about money, right? We don't want to try to act like it's not. It is about money, but it's also about taking the limits off of your life and what you can have through the vehicle of entrepreneurship, whether that's getting into creating, generational wealth or just creating jobs, for other people to be able to take care of their families and to create, make a living for themselves. There are just so many things that I just love about the opportunity to be an entrepreneur because it opens up so many different ways for you to serve and to do marketplace ministry because again, you're solving problems for people and
Mhm.
not even just the people that are your clients, but like I said, for the people that work for you, helping them to build their skill sets and helping them to be able to be better providers for their family. So there are so many things that I really, truly love about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I strongly believe, and I've learned this from my mentor, that money is a reward for service. Oftentimes people
Yeah,
who are not making any money and they're, concerned about how they're going to look at how can you serve? How can you be of service? And in order to multiply that and to make more money and to be, I'm going to say, people coming to you and seeing you as a source of value and wanting to pay you and literally throw money at you, look at the need for, what you can do and your ability to do it. That's
right.
how I've been able to survive as an entrepreneur for 11 years as a single mom of 3.
Yep. Yep. It is looking at how can you serve. And I think when you position yourself as a resource for people or as an answer to people's most pressing problems, you don't really have a struggle with selling. Like
Mhm.
I found, especially with new entrepreneurs, like that's the biggest thing. And that was one of my biggest hurdles that I had to overcome was actually like asking people to pay me for something, right?
Mhm.
But that's the thing. When you know that you are simply exchanging value, right? You're
Yeah.
exchanging the solution and they're giving you, like you said, just the byproduct of you being of service and you being that solution. It doesn't feel like this. I think people have kind of given just bad salespeople and scrupulous people in business have given selling a bad name. But of course, if
Right.
you're not selling, you don't actually have a business. And so I think when you realize that this is just an exchange of value, right?
Mhm.
Me putting something out there. And that's why I always tell people when I talk to people that want to get into entrepreneurship, never build a business off of something that you don't have a result in. Like
Mhm.
a lot of times we'll just say, "Oh, I just want to sell some stuff," just
Mhm.
selling stuff, or you see somebody else doing something and you really think that's really cool. So, oh, why don't I do that? But like find the thing that again, that you can be a tour guide for
Tour
and that
guide.
you have
Yeah.
results to, that you have the results to support. And then on top of that, not just stopping at looking at, okay, well, what results do I have that I know I could get for somebody else? But now you take it a step further And then you look at, okay, now what is the market actively and urgently seeking answers to right now? Because that
Right.
changes, right? In terms of what's important right now. I mean, we see that in the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that even for me, I had to go out and get a whole new customer base, but it was looking at what results do I know how to provide for this client base, and what do they need answers to right now, and how
Right.
can I make those things intersect to create a profitable offer for my business. Meaning that the things that I know that I can deliver for them and the things that they're actively looking for, at what place do those things meet to create the profit that I need in my business?
Wow. Wow. See?
And so yeah, that's that's what I always tell people. Like, it's not rocket science. Like,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship does not have to be hard. I think we make it hard when that's when business is hard. It's like when you're looking at things that aren't authentic to you, that don't align with your story, that don't align with your journey, that don't align
Mm-hmm.
with your skill set. That's when business is hard. But if
Right.
you're aligning all of those things in terms of what is natural to you and what you know that you could actually serve people in, it's not hard at all. And it helps you combat imposter syndrome, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you are trying to do things that you don't necessarily, you may know about them, right? But you don't necessarily know how to duplicate it. Like, I think if I tell my nephew, 2 + 2 = 4, and he repeats, oh yeah, 2 + 2 = 4, does he really know how to add? No, he doesn't know the skill of it. He just has the knowledge of, okay, 2 + 2 = 4, but that's all he has. And I see a lot of people doing that. They're getting the 2 + 2 = 4, but they don't actually have the experience or the skill set to actually teach somebody else how to actually add. Does that make sense? I hope this makes
Yep.
sense. Like,
Yep.
and I think when you're doing the 2 + 2 = 4 thing, and you're just seeing and taking knowledge from other people's courses or Googling things and trying to regurgitate that and calling it a coaching business or whatever you're calling it,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
when business is hard. And that's when you feel like a fraud, because essentially you are. If you
Mm-hmm.
can't really deliver those results for somebody and help somebody else to get it, then yeah, that's when imposter syndrome takes over. And not that imposter syndrome does not happen to women that are genuinely good at what they do, but when you know you're genuinely good at what you do, and you know what you know, nobody can tell you what you don't know, and you have something to fight against imposter syndrome when you know your stuff, and you can
Yeah, you have the
go back to
confidence from
results.
your competence.
Yeah, and you have receipts to actually say, you know what, I know what I'm doing. Get behind me, Satan. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm doing here, so let's move on past it. But if you don't have those results and those receipts, again, that's when business is hard, and that's when you don't get results for your clients.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have dropped so many gems. I, I feel like if we even unpack that, we're going to be on here for like another 45 minutes. So I want, before we go to the final segment, I want you to tell people where they could stay connected with you online to get more gems.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm really active over on Instagram, and you can find me there at Rachel L. Proctor, or you can actually go to my website. That's where I genuinely update things in terms of like free trainings that I'll have, or if I'm launching, another cohort for my coaching program, and that is www.rachellproctor.com.
Perfect. So I will have those direct links in the details section so they can just click and connect. They don't have to search too far.
Absolutely. And I do respond to DMs on Instagram as long as they are appropriate. I'm going to clear the room on that. But yeah, so I love to have conversations with you guys and chat it up with you guys about most anything. So yeah, hit me up over there.
Awesome. Awesome. So for the final segment of the show, I call it a walk in her wisdom. And I just ask a couple of quick reflection questions, and you share the first thing that comes to mind, whether it be one word or one sentence.
Okay.
All right. What do you wish women would do more of?
Take time for themselves.
What have you become better at saying no to in the last 5 years? And that could be distractions, invitations, family.
Request for my time.
What new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life in the last 5 years?
Being more comfortable with public failure. I wish I could unpack that.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Permission to unpack.
Well, I think being okay with public failure, because as you go to different heights in your life, I know for me, last year I ran for mayor. I'd been on council for 6 years prior to that, and served in many different roles publicly, but I lost. So there's no way to say that it didn't happen, right? Because it was it was a public thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I had not been okay before I actually because getting into the race, there was a chance I could win or lose, right? And
Right.
I think us not being okay with possibly failing publicly stops us from pursuing a lot of the things that God has really given us a calling to pursue, because we're not okay with the fact that I could possibly not get it and, it would be public.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that when we get okay with, win or lose, if it's not the thing, then it's the thing that's going to lead me to the thing, whether I win or fail. And I think that's really been a game changer for me in terms of my pursuit and just my courage to pursue other things. Knowing that, there's a chance that I might not get it and that people will know that. And there's no way that I can't say that it didn't happen, right? But I've got to be okay with that to not keep myself in a place of stagnation as well.
I love that. I love, like, even as you say that, I'm like, oh, do I have time? I want to say this. When I ran for office in 2018 for MPP, so here in Canada, that's member of provincial parliament. I don't know if I think that equates to like running for state, I believe, over there. But I knew going in, there was a huge chance that I would not win. But what I also knew is that there were other young Black girls who were coming up behind me that need to see that something is possible. And I chose to still run. I chose to still put in the work and sacrifice my time to be a public servant. And in the end, when I did not win, I wasn't devastated to say, oh my God, I failed and I failed publicly. It was the image that I provided for other young girls who grew up in government housing like me, the image that I provided for other young moms who were teenagers when they had kids like me, to show them what is possible. And that year was the most amount of Black candidates ever running at the same time in history.
Wow.
So, oftentimes we're afraid of public failure, not realizing the many wins within that. And it may not necessarily have to be our individual win.
Wow. That's bringing tears to my eyes. That literally is bringing tears to my eyes, because I thought I was saying something, but no, like, that is so true. There's so many wins even in a loss, because like you said, just that image is like permanently ingrained in those young women's minds now. Like, you can't take away that image. You can't unknow what you now know. Right. And so to be able to put that out there, despite, like you said, winning or losing, like, this is the bigger reason why. Yeah. And I think we make it so myopic, and I'm going to get off of this, but I just feel this. I really feel this seriously. Like, tears are in my eyes. I think we make it so myopic and make it be about winning and losing, when winning and losing isn't even the point, right? It's about helping other women and other people, just whoever it is, to know that there are other possibilities for their life when they may have been in a place to where they felt like there was no other options. And so serving as that image is so important.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes we need to take ourselves out of the thing. And, majority of our conversation has been about leadership and service, and I commend you for running for office right now, because people who don't know, they assume that it's about ego. It's about, oh, you get to be front and center and all these things. And I know there are people who are in politics who may be very well narcissistic, but not everybody is that way. And there are some of us who are out here who genuinely come from a place of service. So whether it is that you win or that you lose, you are serving at some capacity on a large scale through the process from start to finish.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
On that. I want to thank you, Rachel, for taking the time to join us. I truly appreciate you.
Yeah, I've had so much fun. This was such a great conversation.
Thank you. You have blessed me today, so thank you.
Wow. Same goes for you.
And to all of you faith walkers out there, until next time, subscribe on all platforms and don't forget to rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Feel free to join the community of faith walkers and sign up for our weekly newsletter at awalkinmystilettos.com, and be sure to grab one of my personal development books available online everywhere. And I'm going to challenge you today. If you can think of at least 3 people that would receive value from Rachel's story, please share it with them. Feel free to screenshot this week's episode and you can tag us on Instagram. You can tag Rachel at Rachel L. Proctor, and you can tag myself at The Real McKinney Smith. And continue to walk in greatness in your stilettos in a manner worthy of your calling.